what we have here are vertebrae, different types of vertebrae. We have a thoracic vertebra right here. This is what one of those guys looks like. This is a cervical vertebra, and this is the lumbar vertebra. They look different because they're in different regions of the spine, so they're going to have different jobs. Like a cervical vertebra, it looks different because it's higher up and it's not supporting so much weight. The lumbar vertebrae, they're going to be holding the most weight, so they're going to have the thickest body. And the thoracic vertebrae, they're in the middle. They don't have as much weight, so they're not going to be as big as the lumbar. And there's some other differences that I'm not really going to take the time to point out, except for one big difference right here. Look at these holes. We'll come back to those. Okay, one thing you should notice right off the bat, all of these guys, they all have bodies. So that's one part you have to know. You have to know the body of the vertebra. This is the body, and I'll show you these bodies, how they fit in actual spine here in a minute. So this is the body, and then they all have these holes, these big holes right in the middle, right here, and that's where the spinal cord is going to run through each vertebra. The big hole in the middle is called the vertebral foramen. So you have to know the body and the vertebral foramen for each one of these. Also, they each have processes coming off of them, running in a transverse fashion and then running in this direction. This is the easiest one to say, the one in this direction. This is the spinous process. This would be coming straight off in your back. If you feel down the center of your back right now, what you think is your spine is actually this thing sticking off. This is the spinous process. On this vertebra, here's the spinous process. On this vertebra, this is the spinous process. This is the spinous process. The processes that stick off to the side, they're the transverse processes. So the transverse processes are another thing you have to know. So you have to know the body for each one, the vertebral foramen, the transverse processes, and the spinous process. So here for this one, we have the spinous process. The transverse processes on this one look like this. They have holes in them. That's what I wanted to tell you about. This is a cervical vertebra. The cervical vertebra, on the transverse processes, they have big holes in them. And these are called the transverse foramina. And the deal about that is that leading up into the skull, on the transverse processes, you have to have these holes because it's a passageway for blood vessels to get up into the skull. So that's the deal with that. And over here on this vertebra, here's the spinous process, and here are the transverse processes on the side. The only other thing you have to know on each vertebra is this region right here that's connecting the transverse process to the body. Actually, it's not. I should say that it's right. This region in here, it's very easily seen on this one. This region connecting the spinous process basically to the transverse process, this region right here, and over here, let's get it this way. It's easiest seen on that other one. It's this region right here. It's easier seen on a picture than in this video, that's for sure. They're called the lamina. It's the lamina. So if it doesn't fuse, if the lamina doesn't fuse, you'd have an exposed spinal cord. It would open up right here and show the spinal cord to the outside. So make sure you look in your book and see what a lamina is. Now, there are the different vertebrae. You only have to know those 5 parts: the lamina, the transverse and spinous processes, the vertebral foramen, and the body. And there is the lamina. That's not a lot. Now, let's get these out of the way. There's one more thing that you do need to know, and that's when you put the vertebrae together, there's another hole. Here are the vertebrae as they are together. These are the lumbar vertebrae. And in between them you have the intervertebral disc, and these are made of the fibrocartilage, if you'll recall from another chapter. When you put them together, there's a hole that is formed. And this hole is where the spinal nerves come out. looking from above, this is the vertebral foramen, this is the spinous process, and these are the transverse processes coming out this way. So that is the vertebral foramen, not the yellow thing. The whole is the vertebral foramen. The yellow thing here is actually the spinal cord that I'm covering. And it's coming out of the vertebral foramen. But from the side, you can see spinal nerves coming out through a hole, and this hole was created by two bones coming together. So we call this an intervertebral foramen. So this is the last thing you need to know. When there are two bones coming together, there's a hole created called an intervertebral foramen, and that allows spinal nerves to come out. Just in case you were to see a picture on a test and that said, what is this hole? It's the intervertebral foramen. Now that brings us to the sacrum. Here's the sacrum, and there's actually not very much on the sacrum that you need to know at all. Here's the sacrum and the coccyx. You need to know your coccyx. All you have to know about the coccyx is there it is. It's the last fused vertebrae of the vertebral column. So there's the coccyx. And here's the sacrum. Now on the sacrum, I just want you to know the sacral, the medial sacral crest, which here's the spinal processes right here. On the sacrum, these are vertebrae that have been fused. And so this is actually the sacral crest. The median sacrum crest is a bumpy line that goes down this, the median sacral crest is, and that is because it's the spinous processes that are left over from those fused vertebrae. So the median sacral crest is just a line that goes down like this. And then there's a flared portion, this outermost region of the sacrum. These are called the ali. Singular, it's ala, A-L-A. So these are the ala. Here's an ala, here's an ala. That's the other thing you have to know. And this region right here of the sacrum, this is the sacral promontory. And it's an important region because it is the inlet of the pelvis, and it's important for you during childbirth because it marks the region where you went through the birth canal. And I'm not sure if I can get a pelvis in here. I'm not sure if it's going to be too thick. No, we can do it. There we go. Here's a sacrum from another view. You went through this one day. It was just about this tight of a fit. Here we go. And so this is the pelvis, and you didn't go through it this way, you came through the other way, but here is the sacral promontory, and this up here is the pubic symphysis. I'm having to look upside down to do this, so I hope I can do this, but this marks the pelvis inlet right here, and so the child had to go through here, and this is one of the regions it had to navigate through, which is the sacral promontory. Here the ali of the sacrum. There's the coccyx down here. So this marks the pelvis inlet. So know your sacral promontory and be thankful that you made it through. You may not have made it through. You may have been a different kind of birth altogether, a cesarean. But if you made it through, you can thank your mother. Bless her heart. Okay, that's it for this video. Let me show you one more thing just in case. Oh yeah. On this sacrum, it's a much better median sacral promontory on this one. So there's that median sacral promontory to know. Now we're done.